Hey everyone, happy Wednesday and thank you for tuning in. Today, I'll be making a very simple cream sauce pasta and mini lemon tarts, which are a great study snack or dessert. We're gonna start off with the lemon tarts, since they do require a bit more prep and wait time. They're made up of two parts, the lemon curd and the crust, and you only need 6 ingredients in total for this dessert. Here is a quick rundown of the ingredients and measurements needed, as this recipe is a bit more sensitive and precise. Following the guidelines on the wrapper, I'm cutting 6 tablespoons of butter from the stick, then cutting it into smaller chunks. We're gonna let this sit on the side until it reaches room temperature. Next up, I'm zesting around 1 whole lemon in order to make 1 tablespoon of zest. Please be careful when using a grater. These things can really hurt a lot if you're not careful. Unfortunately, I know from experience. Keep your fingers far away from the surface and firmly apply pressure only on downward strokes. After that, I'm cutting some lemons in half for juicing. Including the lemon I zested, I used around 3 or 4 medium-sized lemons. Make sure you hold your lemon firmly since it's round and curl your hand into a claw grip so that your fingertips are as far away from the blade as possible. Here, I'm using a citrus juicer to juice my lemons. These are super easy to find, super simple and quick to use, and they even catch the seeds for you. You can also use a citrus press or any other equipment you have. Another super easy method to juice your lemons without equipment is to use a fork. I like to gently stab my lemon a few times for good measure, then squeeze the lemon around the fork. Gradually rotate the lemon around the fork as you squeeze to extract as much juice as possible. To make my lemon curd as smooth as possible and in order to get rid of all the seeds, I'm running my lemon juice through a fine mesh strainer. This step isn't absolutely necessary, but the seeds do need to go. You should end up with around 80 to 100 milliliters of lemon juice. I like my lemon curd extra sour, so I'm using the full 100 milliliters. Now I'm moving on to the main body of the lemon curd, which is egg yolks, and we need a total of 4 of them. I'm cracking my egg against the side of the bowl, then passing the egg between the 2 halves of the shell in order to separate the whites. Once I've separated the egg as much as possible, I'm dropping the egg yolk into another bowl. Remember to wash your hands after handling the eggs. You can also save your egg whites to make scrambled eggs, omelets, or some other baked recipe. After the eggs, we're ready to combine all the ingredients. Into a bowl, I'm adding my egg yolks, lemon juice, granulated sugar, lemon zest, and a bit of salt. You may also notice that I have used 6 egg yolks, but this is only because my eggs were extremely tiny. For this next step, we need to create a double boiler. I'm boiling some water in a pot that's large enough for my bowl of ingredients to sit on top of. After it comes to a boil, bring the heat down to a simmer. Once my water is just lightly bubbling, I'm placing my ingredients on top of the pot. I recommend using a heat-proof glass bowl. Double check to make sure that your water doesn't touch the bottom of this bowl because lemon curd should never be cooked on direct heat. From here on, the lemon curd needs to be stirred constantly to mix the ingredients thoroughly and to prevent the eggs from curdling or scrambling. Whisk and cook until the mixture becomes thick, which takes around 10 minutes. It took closer to 15 for me since I added extra lemon juice. The end product should resemble something like hollandaise sauce. A huge tip is to use the least amount of metal as possible. The eggs and lemon react with metal bowls and utensils, so try to use a glass bowl and silicone whisk. I used a metal whisk because that's all I had on hand. Once your mixture starts to look more pale and thick, carefully remove it from the heat. Now that my mixture is removed from the double boiler, I'm adding my room temperature butter, 1 chunk at a time, while constantly whisking. You know you're done when all the butter has melted and the lemon curd takes on a more uniform appearance. Also, throughout the cooking process, make sure to scrape down the sides of your bowl to make sure everything is cooked evenly and incorporated evenly. I'm placing a piece of plastic wrap on top of my bowl, making sure that the plastic wrap is directly touching the top of the lemon curd. This prevents a skin from forming on the top. Your lemon curd will thicken as it cools. After it cools a bit at room temperature, I like to pop my lemon curd in the fridge to make it extra cold. Now we can move on to the crust. I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The crust is super easy to make. I'm simply adding a 1/4 cup of melted butter or margarine to 1 1/4 cups of boxed graham cracker crumbs. You can either get them ready from the store or make your own cracker crumbs with a plastic bag and rolling pin or a food processor. Now all I'm doing is mixing everything together until the crumbs start to stick to each other. Once you're done, the crust should look a little like this. It's kind of crumbly, but stays tight and compact when it's packed down. To make the little shells, I'm using a mini cupcake tin and I've lined it with the appropriate sized cupcake liner. I'm scooping some of the mixture in little by little and pressing it down with my spoon and fingers. Make sure you create a sort of bowl shape with higher edges in order to hold the lemon curd. By the way, I managed to make 18 tart shells with this amount of graham cracker crumbs, and at the end, I had a bit of lemon curd left over. After they're all packed down, I put my shells in the oven to bake for 5 minutes. After those 5 minutes are up, I set the baked shells aside and let them cool before filling them. I'm using 2 spoons to pick up around 1½ teaspoons of the chilled lemon curd and placing it into the shell. I'm trying to keep it as neat as possible by smoothing down the filling so it looks a bit nicer. You could totally be fancy and use a piping bag too. And that's it. I've decided to add some raspberries and blueberries to my tarts to add some color, and I think they're super cute. I like to keep these in the fridge and snack on a few when I'm studying at 4 a.m, and these are great for potlucks and gatherings once the world opens back up. Now we're moving on to the pasta. For this, I'm using bow tie pasta, carrots, celery, onion, garlic, and cream cheese. First up, I'm cutting my carrots. Since I'm using these thin carrots, I'm just cutting little slices. If you're using a thicker carrot, you can cut it into sticks first, then cubes. Remember to use a firm claw grip to protect your fingers and to always brush things off your knife in a downwards motion with the blade instead of up against it. Next, I'm cutting up some celery. To make the pieces the same size as the carrots, I'm cutting the celery stalk lengthwise while using a bridge hold, then slicing it into small pieces. Make sure you cut all the way through the fibers. After cutting off the ends of the onion and peeling off the skin, I cut my onion in half. Then I'm laying it flat side down on the cutting board and cutting slices. I'm then going to take these slices and roughly dice them into smaller cubes. Make sure you hold your onion firmly with a claw grip and watch your fingers. For the garlic, I simply cut off the end, removed the skin, and cut it into thin slices. Once again, try to hold the garlic with just the very tips of your fingers and nails, since it's quite small. In addition to the vegetables, I'm also using shrimp, but you can use any protein of your choice. The shrimp I'm using are peeled, deveined, and frozen shrimp, and they make the job a lot easier. To cook my pasta, I'm adding a bit of salt to boiling water, and then dropping my pasta in. While I move on to other steps, I'm making sure to stir the pasta so nothing sticks together. Since I'm no pasta chemist, I like to let my pasta sit and cook for a little less than the recommended time on the package, and then I'll scoop out an unfortunate subject every once in a while for a taste test. I usually prefer my pasta to be molto al dente at this point, or a little less than al dente, where it's cooked but firm enough to not be soggy after tossing it around in some sauce. To a heated pan, I'm adding some vegetable oil and then my carrots. After a few seconds, I'm adding the celery as well. To be honest with you, I've never cooked this dish before, and I've only ever seen my mom make it once or twice. I never actually learned to cook, but I grew up watching cooking shows and watching my mom move around the kitchen. The first time I cooked on my own was actually after I moved out 2 years ago. I think it runs in the family. My great-grandmother was the type of person who could replicate any complicated recipe after tasting the dish a few times, and she taught my mother how to cook. I guess I come from a family of natural chefs who have inhuman eyeballing skills. But whatever it is, I'm glad that this skill has been able to keep me healthy and full, as well as give me a great way to unwind and have some time to myself. And now, I'm grateful that I get to share this with you. Anyways, enough of that. Add your onions once the celery and carrots start to get tender. Remember to stir everything around so they all cook evenly. Once the onions start to become translucent and start to brown, I'm adding my garlic and once again giving it all a good stir. I'm making some space in my pan so that my raw and cooked ingredients don't mix. I'm placing my shrimp flat in the pan, making sure that none of them are overlapping. Not sure if you can see here, but another quick shrimp tip is to score a straight line down the outer curve of the shrimp before cooking it. This allows the shrimp's muscles to relax so that the shrimp opens up beautifully when fully cooked. Then I'm seasoning one side with salt and pepper. Once you're done seasoning, the bottom side of the shrimp should be starting to turn pearly pink and opaque. That's when you can flip them. I love cooking shrimp because it's super easy to tell when they're fully and safely cooked. After flipping, I'm leaving the shrimp for a few seconds, then you can start to mix everything together. I'm making some space in my pan to put my block of cream cheese. Since it has quite the strong flavor, you can start off with a smaller amount and adjust to your taste as long as you do it quickly, or else everything else will overcook. I think I've used around 3 tablespoons of cream cheese. Since I'm multitasking, I've got my pasta water right next to me. I've added around 2 cups of this pasta water to the cream cheese in order to help it melt faster and to get the sauce to the right consistency. Make sure you reserve more than 2 cups just in case. After a bit of constant stirring, your sauce should look a little bit like this. It's still a bit watery and my other ingredients are not overcooked. I'm adding a bit of black pepper, then using a strainer to add my pasta to the pan. After everything is fully mixed together, it's ready to serve. If you're like me and can't have cream cheese, you can use regular butter, vegan butter, or olive oil and lemon to make a simple sauce. I would recommend using around a tablespoon of butter, a quarter of a lemon's worth of juice, as well as salt and pepper to taste as an alternative. And we're done! This meal is super easy to prepare and super easy to pair with other food. I usually serve my pasta with a side salad or sauteed vegetables and sometimes a nice vegetable soup for cold weather. This recipe is also great because it makes use of both fresh and frozen produce, which can be a huge time saver for university students. Anyways, that's all I have for you today, so I hope you have a great week, hope you take time to treat yourselves nicely, and thanks for joining me today. See you next week!